Nimesh is a researcher at Dr. Reddy's lab, Dr. Reddy's Cell for Employability and Skill Development at the Indian School of Business. As a part of the Center for Emerging Market Solution, he was instrumental in setting up the strategic roadmap for the cell. His research areas include developing financing mechanisms for skills training, designing state-level skill missions, and development of low-cost technology-based content delivery and certification platforms. Over to you, Nimesh.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to talk about the skill gap issue. Like I studied that for labor force at large, IT. Yeah. So I study labor markets and skill gap issues in vocational training largely. IT is something which is not a sector that I've studied closely, but the fundamentals remain the same. So in India, this is one of the biggest issues that we talk about, right? That people have been quoting numbers of 750 million people need to be trained in India. We have workforce of 434 million people currently. I'm assuming they have some skill, that's why the GDP is where it is right now. So assuming that we need to reskill everyone is a little more exaggeration. That's why I took up this topic to just give a counter viewpoint so that we get thinking. So this is what we talk about, right? Water everywhere, water drop to drink. So I'm going to touch upon these 5 topics. Like, do we have an issue with demographics? Do we have an issue about the quantity of engineers that we need? Is it that the quality of academic institutions are really bad? Do we have a broken ecosystem which is not matching the recruiters with the training providers, with the students at large? And is there an expectation mismatch? So you look at this slide, right? So when we have a lot of study tools coming from other countries, the biggest issues that developing economies are facing is they have an aging population, right? And we sometimes take this for granted that we have such a big resource available in this country. So I just thought we'd start with the biggest asset that we already have. So we have a working age population where we're going to rise to around 64% of our population will have be in the working age. You compare an Indian will be, a typical Indian will be 29 years old, right? Compared to what will be in US or China is 37 and 48. And in absolute numbers, 63.5 million people will enter the working age group between now and 2016. So demographics is certainly not an issue. Now you look at the enrollments in engineering, right? IT sector as a whole with add BPO and even high-tech engineering doesn't employ more than 2% of our workforce. Like that is also an exaggeration. And you look at the disproportionate advantages that we already have in this sector. So if you look at from 2006, 7 to 11 and 12, there's been a 3-fold increase in terms of enrollments in engineering colleges, right? So again, something we take it for granted. If you look at other sectors, amongst the big ones, engineering has grown at 24.8% year on year, right? So again, this is not an issue. It's not that we have a capacity constraint in terms of engineering graduates also. Is it favorable? Most other industries that I work with, like recently we worked with the Tamil Nadu government to have skill competencies built for the auto sector. This is the only sector which is actually poaching engineers from others, right? So there is no issue in terms of aspiration amongst job seekers. People are willing to pay money to get jobs. You don't have an issue about social value. You have a robust financing mechanism. One of my biggest areas for research is to try and have a loan product for vocational training students. Students who want to do a course of 40,000, 50,000 rupees to become a barber or a carpenter, you don't have money to take the courses. For IT, you have government writing off education loans in Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. So even that's not an issue. And there's ample capacity in private as well as public institutions. You can't even only blame the government, right? Even the private sector has a huge capacity for training engineers. So then, the next question, right? Is it that the academic institutions are at fault here? If you have enough people, you have enough engineering institution, if you are still not getting quality, what's the issue? So you look at the transitions which have been happening. In 5 years from desktop to mobile and tablets is the rage. From native apps to cloud and HTML suddenly. Enterprise sales to SaaS. So if you look at it from a perspective of a dean, right? If they are preparing their youngsters for the industry, they don't even know whether the industry will last for a decade after the student comes out of the institute. So expecting them basically to train candidates to fit your exact need is not going to happen. And even Mishra in our previous presentation mentioned there's no incentive for firms to invest in general skills, and there is no incentive for students to focus on firm specific skills. So if you allocate responsibility, it makes much more sense for academic institution to focus on the general skills to be imparted into candidates, because that's what the student is paying for. And firms will focus on the firm-specific skills. Now this entire push to have firm-specific skill talent for the industry is like a very short-term myopic viewpoint that the industry has been pushing over the past few years. It makes no sense to expect that a supplier will produce what you want if you give it no advance warning, or you're not willing to help them develop it. Like if you look at other industries, when you call that talent is a raw material, very crucial raw material, people invest in mines. People go to great lengths to basically acquire a mine so that they get raw material for their factories. In auto sector, the vendors will be sitting inside the campus of an auto assembling plant, right? So if others, manufacturing sector, the way they handle their raw material suppliers and the way industry deals with it is very, very different in IT. We signal that academic training does not matter when we hire students from civil and mechanical and electrical. If you say that education, what is imparted in institution matters to you so much, how can you hire a civil engineer who's learned civil for 4 years and still be okay with it and get them productive in 6 months? What it signals to the student as well as the academic institution is what's being taught for 4 years doesn't matter to the industry. And actually even the industry largely looking for people who are smart, creative, people who can think, they have a thought process, and firm-specific skills they're imparting in 4 to 6 months. And also India lacks a robust ecosystem for research, right? Either in companies you're talking about R&D, academic institutions, it's worse. So expecting them to think ahead of the industry in terms of what skills may be required will be asking a bit too much from them. So can we, just a simple thought, can we expect the academia to give us plug and play talent, right? So if you look at the process, today you decide that we have this cloud computing big and we need thousands of people. You go to an academic, tell them that I need people. They agree, for example, that we'll give you the talent. Second year, they'll include the curriculum into their course. 4 years they'll take to graduate. After that, 6 to 8 months, they start becoming productive. At the end of the 7th year, when the candidate comes up with the requirements that you had mentioned in year 1, do you think you'll still need those skills? If the answer is no, then what is the point in the entire noise about asking for firm-specific talent from academia? Right? So the next question is, then if all these are not at fault, is the ecosystem to blame? Now let's try and figure out who's going to solve the problem for which we are whining, right? Is it that the ecosystem is completely broken? Again, the answer is no, right? So you have the ample portals to hire employees, you have portals to hire freelancers, you have portals for hiring interns from graduate institutions, you have temp staffing firms which are very, very mature. So again, it's not an issue with ecosystem also, right? So now let's look at, is it just a mismatch of expectations? That you need certain skills and your expectations. It's like a vendor asks, when you go to a client and tell them that, do you have any more feature requests, right? And the way they are going to respond to your statement that they don't have to pay money is exactly the same thing that you all are doing with your vendors right now. This is just a thought that we need to look at. What we did, we just listed some skill gaps which the industry has informed to National Skill Development Corporation in their IT, ITS and BPO report. So what they asked was, what are the gaps that you want us to fill for you? For project managers level, they are asking inadequate solution mindset when interacting with customers. Like these are the gaps that we are talking about. If you look at for a business and group head, it's inadequate ability to manage large scale operations on transition from one role to the other, right? So these are issues which have been listed. None of these issues basically are issues which academic institutions can solve. I'll come back to that in my last slide. So I did a simple search in terms of what are the tags in terms of skills that people were looking for in Naukri.com, right? The number one is Android for mobile apps right now. Software testing, back office operation, web designing, data analysis, call center. These are the kind of jobs that the IT sector wants. Now tell me, which of these jobs does need an engineer to do these tasks, right? And you're still getting an engineer and clipping about basically we don't have enough skill talent. We want an MBA for 8,000 rupees when Enrega will give you around 4,500. A casual wage earner in a rural area earns an average of 4,000 rupees a month. If you're getting an MBA at 8,000 rupees a month, how do we have the right to clip about their skills, right? So somewhere we have to put things into perspective in the larger context in which we are operating. And they're very, very specific skills. Industry is not asking for a very analytically sound, hard-working engineer. They want anybody who can code in this particular language, we'll hire them, right? So the question being, is it the self-inflicted pain? If none of the previous stakeholders were to blame, the only one left is the industry, right? So what is human capital or skills, as we say? Nishtha mentioned the details. So either it's innate, like either I'm very smart, I'm very driven, motivated, or other things are which are acquired, right? And you can acquire skills either through learning, the new skills which you acquire, which you didn't have before. And the others will be you practicing the old skills which you had learned. If you look at here, right, learning new skills can happen through training and on the job, but practicing old skills will definitely happen only on the job. So where I'm coming to is that even if training is abysmal, right, even before academic institutions were churning out so many engineers, the industry grew during a boom period. Today is a period of recession. You have 3x the number of engineers that you had, and we are still cribbing about basically lack of skills. The issue is not that the academia is churning out bad candidates. The issue is industries are not doing great work, and hence you don't have people with great skills in the market. The day companies start coming up with products and they are willing to do upgraded projects, if you do great work, you'll have people with great skills in the market. What you're seeing right now is because you all took up low value end products, you have people with low value end skills in the market right now. And the process to migrate from low end projects to high end is going to be painful. And it will be not too painful, right? It will be as painful as it was when you started the industry, when you had nobody. And a parallel in e-commerce, right? Suddenly, where was the skilled talent in e-commerce for the industry to boom suddenly in 3 years? They grew with people who had fundamental skills, right? Who could basically think, adapt, learn, and grow faster. Made and crave about not having people with e-commerce capabilities to set up a sector scale council and set up an institute for e-commerce, and then we will grow. They just grew, right? And that's what we'll also have to do. So most repeated complaints about candidates is that they lack experience of doing similar jobs. What they're cribbing about is they're not finding talent who's done the same job somewhere else, right? What they're actually cribbing about is the companies from which I'm trying to poach are not doing a great job of imparting training to that candidate. Like that's exactly rewording the, right? On-the-job training is a process that raises future productivity, right? If you are saying future productivity, what it means is if a candidate can do your project today, you are setting them aside to do something so that 6 months down the line, if you get a better project, they'll be ready for it. There is a trade-off if you want higher productivity later, and it's a cost that you have to incur. If you don't want to incur the cost, you'll have to go through the pain. It's like if you want to lose weight, muscles will pain, right? So there are costs for sure. So should we switch from buy to build in orientation and developing teams? The answer is yes. And should we hire for the typical thing about attitude plus aptitude and train for skills within an organization? That's the only solution for the industry which is growing so rapidly year after year. So that's it. So this gap basically has to be filled by training candidates and doing great work. Like that's it. Any questions?
Yeah, we have time for questions, so we can take a few questions.
I think you should have replied to team lead guy.
Manish is actually writing the chapter in a book, so that's where we'll enter the communication and speak to the
Because
team.
they are creating another source of revenue for them. They are not doing good to anyone in this country.
No,
It seems they are mixing the demand supply with the education.
No, they are making money for themselves.
Yeah, so that's one.
He's a businessman, that's it.
so it's a little off. Let me just tell you about the role that these team lead players play, right? Industry basically, like I interact with a lot of training providers and HR managers. HR managers are typically lazy, right? So one thing which I missed out is that the geographical mismatch is a big issue in talent, people finding skills, right? In engineering, IT, for example, fortunately, the supply of labor is concentrated in areas where the production is also happening. That means the IT hubs. In other sectors, auto, the talent is coming from other states and the IT guys, the recruiters are sitting somewhere else. Why I said lazy is not because they don't work hard in the organization, but if you ask them to go and source talent where people need the jobs the most and hence will come at lower salary with the same skills, people are not willing to do that. That's why like people like team leads, although they get into and talking too much about people having only specific skills, the fact is they reach out to those areas, pick candidates, train them for the final finishing and put them to jobs. So the idea of social reducing inequality, right? These people contractors in the labor market may look like a little more like demons, but they actually play a very important role of ensuring information asymmetry is reduced. And that sometimes we underestimate the importance of information in people getting the job. And Deepa mentioned about social learning, right? Career choices mostly are made through your social networks. So there are theories on identity which talks about the choice and career that we make is based on the information that I have and perceived risks that I see. So typical example being a Gujarati finds, for example, doing business as not a risky proposition. Compared to Bengali, for example, most of the people we'll see want to get into academia, right? So people tell me, for example, being a Gujarati, that business is risky, why do you do that? And if you counter that, you go, no,
Is it politically incorrect?
So the notion of risk, the thing is, I return that, in fact, Bengalis are much more risk taking, right? Because you're going to do masters, spend the day trying to apply for a PhD program, go for a PhD program, and your career is dependent on one guide. For 5 to 6 years, you finish your PhD, then it takes 7 years for you to get your tenure, and then you get a safe job, right? If I spend that much time in one business with the same stipend that you get in a PhD program, even I have an extremely safe career after that. And the notion of risk is very different, is largely because I see 15 people doing the same thing in my community, and they see 15 people doing the same thing in their community. So hence this entire idea of people learning from online, right? It doesn't work out, it'll give you content. But learning largely happens through peers and confidence level, because you've seen somebody do it and you think you're better than them, you go and try and do it. And that happens at the job level also. So hence people try and have smarter and smarter people aggregate towards each other, because all of them start becoming more productive.
Nimesh, there's a question.
So is there any study how we are performing as compared to other countries in this skill gap and all those things? Is this issue only for India or?
So what I'm saying is, it's not a skill gap, right? What I'm trying to say is, see, a skill gap exists when you're saying that there's an individual who can't do anything, right? For a call center job, all engineers are employable, all of them, right? They are not employable if you want to put them into R&D team of Microsoft, for example. So the issue is matching, issue is information, issue is basically expectations of industry. So that's why we went to the National Skill Development Authority. They are putting thousands and thousands of crores in basically training programs, delivery. You ask them, a guy sitting in Chhattisgarh wants a job here, and they want to call and figure out if there's a job availability, can I get trained and go and get the job? Which phone number will they call? The answer is, I don't know, right? So when you're putting 31,000 crores, if you would have allocated 10% to sharing information, ensuring that reaches people, things will be much more different. So we are just trying to address one issue which we understand, and we are not addressing issues which will take us effort to basically try and explore a lot more. And that's where the entire gap
Would you be able to share this presentation? Would
Yeah,
you be able to share
sure.
this slide?
And is your paper presented somewhere? Have you published it?
So I don't publish papers basically. So I largely do consulting, and I work with academics. We fund as a cell, so we have academics who've done papers in different areas. But I can share the orientation area about why people
Why I
aggregate.
ask this question mainly because this is a very good amount of data which you have put. It should go to public or to
I
some
think they are going
government
to
bodies.
publish a book, right?
Yeah, so we are writing a book actually on this topic.
Okay.
So Manish, for example, is writing a chapter
Yeah,
on.
not only academics, but maybe people from government should check this out.
I want to bring other dimension to it. See, so far we are talking about in the skill gap in the specifically in the service industry. Because service industry, what Rajiv and Subir said, they're exactly looking at the industry and they're raising those concerns. I totally agree with Sir as well as the Dr. Tony Paran about overall skill development aspect. But there is a different gap in the service. Because in the service industry, we are chasing against the demand. The demand is coming from somebody else is controlling the demand. Today, I want maybe I think 1,000 Java developers. Tomorrow, maybe is not required. So, industry, I say that we are not looking at how to create or shape up the demand. We are still trying to chase the demand created with some.
So like production factories, right? Factories also don't have a clue about what demand will come in. That's why forecasting models are built, right?
Just want to stop there. The significant difference is automobile industry, let's take a production. but it is not going to significantly change the supply chain of your assembling unit of an automobile.
No,
I mean, R&D is going to change. How efficiently you can
So
build your engine.
let me just put it, see the quantum of investments that an automobile company will have to do will be large, right? So you have to give it to them that if they have to make that decision in 10 years, it's okay. For y'all, the investment will be small. For that, if you have to make that decision every 3 years, even that's okay. It's a trade-off between the kind of businesses that people select, right? If you can augment your capacity with limited investment, you do it more frequently, there's a choice between doing that or making huge investments in a longer period of time, which an auto sector or a steel plant will do.
I think this point is that you're not, for instance, you're just responding to an exogenous demand. You're not creating this demand. So you're not. So therefore, I mean, your argument centers on numbers. For instance, the volume of the workforce, right, that I'm creating. But still, in terms of quality of workforce, am I creating a quality workforce?
So what I'm saying is,
drive the
Java, he needs the Java developers in the next 3 years.
Not 3 years, not 3 years.
2 years, for example. The notion is you'll have to say that 6 years before you need it if you want academic institutions to deliver exactly what you want. If that's not the case, you'll have to, it's very difficult for, they can give you candidates who can pick up skills within 6 months. That's their job.
That is the ideal scenario. I'm
want.
absolutely fine with that. That's
idea
how we
behind
should.
it. But I think maybe we'll take this over dinner because it
The
will.
only point what I want to make it is if you invest in an automobile engineer or design engineer for the specific training, whatever you invest, so that will be useful because it's working on the T, where the deep in that specific segment of it. Because he's enhancing his productivity on the design aspects or R&D aspects. Whereas here in the service sector, they're constantly changing things. Where you cannot invest like the guy, even if you put the productivity, it is constantly changing. Java to SQL to something HTML, is constantly changing. So there, we are changing the demand. Whereas in the automobile sector, the example of the German car, because they're investing on the T part of it, which is deep rooted. Where they can able to produce the world-class cars. Here we are chasing the demand in the service. Where we cannot able to.
Thank you so much for your.
Thank you.